What up, peeps? It's your girl Dash. Come back to Real Takes. Well, you guys, it's that time again. Review time for The Swamp Thing. This one will be for episode 4, titled Darkness on the Edge of Town. This was a great episode. First and foremost, I wanted to put out there because I had stated to you guys I wanted to know exactly each individual who's directing these episodes, because since the beginning, the pilot, I've been loving the way the storyline's been unfolding. Now, this particular episode was directed by Carol Banker. I'm going to showcase her up in here. And I'm excited about this one because of the fact that she's directed quite a lot of eclectic type of shows. She's done episodes for the show called The Legacies, The Magicians, The Originals, The Vampire Diaries, X-Files. She did an episode, of course, of Doom Patrol, and of course this one. So you know what? That makes me very excited to know that she did this one. When I saw X-Files, I was just like, okay, yes. So this one, let's go ahead and just jump right into it. This one, of course, as you all know, it starts off where it shows, Avery kind of, having a little smoke outside, whichever, and he's having a flashback. You see the scene where it looks like he's, in the midst of something where he's dealing with, looks like to be a gator with his dad, and his dad is trying to get him probably to do like his first kill of sorts, whichever, and he's hesitant. He's kind of, not wanting to do it. It keeps kind of flashing back to him, present day, kind of thinking about, how he felt about taking a life in any type of form, human or animal, and he's just not willing to do it. And of course, in the end, you see that his father ends up, getting what looks like to be the weapon, the knife or whatever, and stabs the gator, whatever, the blood splatters, whichever. But of course, present day, it goes back to, and it shows that doesn't seem to phase Avery now. Of course, he does eventually kick Gordon's body. That is, of course, the guy who was supposed to be giving him certain loans to keep his money afloat with certain things he's trying to do, in Marseille. And he just got tired of it, and a couple of choice words threatened him, whichever, and it just didn't turn out well for Gordon. So in the end, he pushes his body into, looks like some sort of ditch like he'd already made for him with a fire to kind of basically burn his remains. He's disposing of his body, and it kind of just shows him just kind of, looking off, whatever, like, this man is not going to ruin my life and expose me for what I've done. So from there, you see the scene, which kind of sets up how we're dealing with the situation in this particular episode, which I love it, because now we're getting a little bit more an idea of, what kind of supernatural type of, entities are happening, which I love. Now, from there, like I said, you see two guys, getting ready to do some work, in the evening, late work, whatever, and they're kind of walking through the woods, and they look for, kind of like they're looking for a specific, tree to kind of start, cutting down, chopping down. Now, one of them is actually in the midst of doing it, while the other one's kind of just standing there, kind of overseeing, and he starts to kind of hear some rambling, whatever, and he's kind of looking up, and he notices that, branches, certain things are falling out. Of course, the first thing that kind of falls out looks like to be kind of like, something with the number, has, was it, I think it's a 211 or something like that, or 201, excuse me if I can't remember the number. Then it shows some teeth, whatever. He kind of starts looking, he's yelling for his friend to stop. He's not really paying attention. Come to find out, he's got, some earplugs in, so he's not really paying any mind. He's just, sawing it down, whatever. Eventually, the body falls out, really decomposed body, it falls on him, and eventually he must hear the noise of the body falling. The guy, he turns around, he's freaking out, all the while the other guy who has the body on top of him, for some reason it latches onto his hand, his arm, the mouth of the decomposed body, and as he's trying to remove it, it's like it gets a nice cut on him. By the time he gets up from the body, somewhat of the cut kind of disappears, and that's kind of when you realize that there's a lot more going on with this particular body, whichever. By then, they're both freaked out. They leave. They want no part of it anymore. So from there, you kind of just see them running off, out, trying to get away, and the body's kind of there. That's when you see Swamp Thing kind of show up after they have left, and he kind of, inspects the body. And I love how you kind of see a scene of him where he puts his hand out, and it's like some of the, branches, whatever, from his body kind of goes over the, decomposed body, and it kind of goes back, and it's like he kind of feels that this is a particular body that, has some sort of evil, whatever, and he realizes the evil now is gone, whichever, and that's kind of when he looks, kind of in a, out into the, area of the woods, whatever, realizing, something might have left this body, and it might have went with one of the guys. So, okay, from there, you kind of see the scene where it shows, the next day, excuse me, Delroy and Liz are opening up the, their restaurant, whichever, and of course the guy who'd gotten hurt with the body on his arm, he shows him, he's like, yeah, we were out late, we're doing our own thing, which, trying to get stuff. She's like, I don't want to deal with it anymore. Didn't go into detail as to how, and why he feels the need to, say that to them, whichever. And they're like, okay. So he goes to the back, putting his apron on, getting ready to get some work done. And of course, he's standing over the sink. And of course, he thinks he sees something. And of course, Liz comes in like, okay, what's wrong? He's like, you didn't see that? You didn't see anything? He's like, all I see is some dirty dishes that need to be cleaned. So from there, you kind of see the scene where it shows him like, okay, he's freaking out or whatever. And it kind of shows him, looking, again, whatever. And all of a sudden, he kind of picks up and he sees a snake. And this is the scene where you see him kind of really like lose it, whatever. To us, we can see clearly he's hallucinating this whole situation where the snake is on his arm. To Liz and of course her father Daryl are coming in there. They don't see anything. They're like, what's wrong? What's going on? What's happening? Whatever. And he's trying his best to get the snake off him. He's using whatever weapon. Of course, at the time you see him, he has a knife. He starts chopping, cutting, his, arm, whatever, just kind of grazing it, whatever, with the knife. And they're like, back up. Liz is trying to keep her father from being, cut by him because he's like all over the place, turning around while he's cutting his hand. Then he starts to stab his arm fully, with the knife. Oh my goodness, so gory. Then when he doesn't see that doesn't work, he takes it a step further and puts his hand all the way into the disposal. Oh my God. And that's when he finally kind of conks out or whatever, and they're both leaning over him, but before he could completely, pass away, he kind of takes his hand, he scratches Delroy's arm. It's almost like this particular evil entity left his body and it took on a new host. Now, that scene of him putting his hand in the garbage disposal was so disgusting. And when his hand came out, I was like, oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. I said they were going to be giving us the blood, the gore, and they're not disappointing me. That scene was really graphic. That really hurt my stomach just watching that part. I had to almost cover my hands up, and I did. Let me just be real. I did a little bit because it was just a little too graphic for me. So, but yes, of course, now you see it's left him and it's caused to work this way to another host. So moving from that, you guys, you see the scene where it shows Abby show up in the swamp, and she's coming because she's now needing to see Alec, aka Swamp Thing, so she can get a sample. Now, she asks him, can she get one? And that's when you see the scene where, actually before that, I love this other part, where you see how she's trying to locate him. And all of a sudden, the branches and stuff from the swamp kind of lead her to him. I had to make note of that because I thought that was a really nice little scene that we showcased. I didn't want to forget that part. Now, from there, like I stated, of course, she sees him. He's kind of hiding over the, near a tree, but he's visible enough that she can see him and he can see her. She asks for a sample, and then from there you see this nice little scene where it shows him leaning his hand out, and most of the tree branch kind of works his way to her so she can get a sample. And she's like, thank you. And I thought that was really good. That was a very interesting scene. I love that he had done that. I thought that was a little different, but it was like he didn't want her to close, and he had to make a note of that, whatever. She's like, thank you. We're going to figure out what's going on with you, what we can do to help you. He's like, do whatever you need to do. He says, there's a lot of going on here. There's a lot of evil here, meaning for her to stay clear. And I like that because she's like, what are you talking about, evil, whichever. So, yes, and little does she know it really is. She has no clue what's really going on. So she goes back, to her job, and she starts kind of going through the sample, whatever, and seeing the way, the microscopics and all that stuff are kind of, and manifesting so fast, whatever. And she's, talking in her recorder. Unbeknownst to her, Jason Woodrow is, of course, snooping, and she's like, do you ever knock? I'm like, creeper. Straight creeper. And he comes in and he's talking about certain things she's discussing in regards to certain molecules and chromosomes, things of that nature. I don't know, all scientific talk. And he's trying to understand what she's discussing, whatever. She's putting together her data, and you kind of see that. And eventually she kind of decides to show him, and he's literally kind of dumbfounded by it, and rightfully so, because it's nothing he's probably ever seen, she's ever seen, or whichever. And he doesn't know what to think of it, but it's just something that has him very intrigued at what she's found, if it's more to it, that she's not letting on, whatever. And she's like, I'm not going to share this with anybody, the world, until it affects whatever, especially him, because of course I think he would love to take credit for being the one that found this, whichever. We feel like that ego on him knows no bounds. I wouldn't even put it past him, whichever, and I don't blame her. I wouldn't tell him anything. Keep him as far out of knowing everything as she possibly can, because if he knew all of it, he would try to take over it, and he would use probably Avery to help him to, run shot, on her to get what he needed to get out of her. You see a small scene where she comes in contact with Daniel, aka Blue Devil. He's, seeing the kids, whatever, bringing balloons, whatever. She thought this is so sweet. And of course, he's still feeling like, she's in his life, for a reason, whichever. This might be this chance, whatever, that he can finally, be free of Marseille, whichever. And I'm looking forward to them delving into that, and understanding what's really going on there and why he keeps making these type of comments and claims. So that was kind of a cute little moment there, whichever. Now from there, excuse me, you see the scene where Avery and Marie show up, and they're like, we love that everybody's getting better and getting well. We want to, invite you all to like a little, feast, over at the, I think the town hall, center or whatever. Everybody can come, whichever. And it was a nice little gesture. And it shows, of course, from there, Maria saying, I know you have a lot going on. You're busy. You can go see your other patients. I'm going to sit with Susie. Because, of course, she sees Susie before Maria comes up. And it shows the scene of course, Susie, doing some little doodling, whatever, and all, making some artwork. But of course, artwork is very interesting because it's a picture of the Swamp Thing. So of course, before Maria comes over to, suggest Abby, go help some others, she closes up whatever and all that, and so they would not let on whatever. We don't want anybody else knowing about said Swamp Thing, whichever, because they would not understand it as much so as Susie and Abby. So from there, she's like, you feel okay? Susie, she's like, she's fine. So of course, Marie sits with her, whichever, and Abby's kind of hesitant, but she's like, it's harmless. Plus, she doesn't feel like getting into it with Maria, so she kind of just, goes along with it, whichever. So kind of from there, you see the scene of Liz and Delroy talking to Lucilla, the sheriff, about what happened. They can't believe somebody they grew up with, especially Liz growing up with, I cannot remember his name. Sorry, you guys, don't fault me. Just all these years, for this episode to happen out of nowhere, like some freak accident of sorts where he's having these, delusional hallucinations, whatever, and they're not understanding truly what's going on, especially Delroy. Liz, maybe, but not to the full extent of, exactly what is happening. What was this whole isolated incident about? What exactly happened? So Abby, of course, shows up to find out she'd heard some things happen, whichever. And in the midst of this, they're kind of talking like, what is this? She's like, I don't know. I can get to the bottom of this, trying to understand this. That's when we start seeing the scene of Delroy acting a little funny. He starts to kind of, scratch his arm. And he's kind of looking around, and all of a sudden to us, we see the scene of it starting to get dark. And that's when we see the scene of him having a flashback of him, having a situation where his, family was being robbed or whichever, the restaurant, whatever, and his mother gets shot. Well, of course, he's a young boy, whichever, and he's like, oh my God, Mom. And it's these guys who are masked. They look like they have these little clown masks on, whichever. In the midst of this, you see him kind of going back and forth. He, of course, eventually gets a gun, whichever, and he's trying to fend them off. All the while, he's showing a gun in front of his daughter and Abby, and they're trying to, Abby's trying to keep Liz at bay, so she doesn't accidentally get shot, whatever. They're not understanding what's going on. The sheriff is not in the actual restaurant at the moment, so she's not aware of what's happening inside. So of course he's going back and forth, yelling, trying to shoot, shooting his glass, in his restaurant, shooting at the side of the wall, whichever. By then, the sheriff eventually comes in with him, and they're trying to figure out how to get him, and she's trying to take his gun down. Put your gun down. She has her gun out. She's like, no, don't do anything. Don't do anything. He's just kind of going back. Eventually, the sheriff does get kind of like a bit of, get an upper hand on him, excuse me. And from there, you kind of see the scene of them kind of getting into like a little bit of a tussle, whatever. And he kind of scratches the back of her, kind of the nape of her neck, whatever, and all that. But then they're kind of holding him down. Abby uses this opportunity to go to her bag, her doctor's bag, and get some sort of sedative or whatever out, needle, whatever, and to put in him to kind of, calm him down. And they get him down to the ground, whichever. And of course, the sheriff's just like, kind of hurt from her wound from him. And, that's when, they kind of just like, trying to kind of understand what just happened, like what's going on. I'm not understanding what's happening here. So, that was a really good scene. Like I said, this evil entity, whatever, supernatural entity, whatever, other things are happening within Marseille. And I would love that we're getting to see a little bit more of that. So from there, you just kind of see Maria and Avery kind of talking really quickly about the things they're trying to do, whichever. He's trying to woo himself a little bit with Maria because, of course, he's in the doghouse a little bit with her because she refuses to give any more money to help him fund whatever he's doing for the swamp or whatever. You already know I've discussed about the accelerant, the stuff he's doing with Jason, the doctor, Jason Woodrow, whatever, and she's just not feeling it. So he doesn't bring that up, but he's like, let's just do this, we'll make sure Susie's okay, whatever, not realizing the lengths he's going to go to kind of distract Maria into the point where she'll be happy, and then she might, kind of buckle a little bit and like give him a little bit more money. Just already up to just no good, whichever. He's a shady brother right there. So, but needless to say, moving from that, okay, you see the scene of Delroy kind of telling Liz and Abby while he's in, the hospital bed, what he saw. And of course her, Liz explained to Abby that, his dad, her dad had dealt with, a situation where he lost his mother when he was young, somebody, burglarized the restaurant, whichever, and him having this vision and then understanding, what's really going on. He says, I don't know what came over me, why, I was thinking of these things, whichever, just something, I just started having this vision, whichever, and I just don't know where it came from, whichever. And then of course, them trying to understand what exactly happened from that. And that's really interesting. So when they go outside, they're thinking to themselves, okay, is there something more they're not understanding? Liz explained to her what happened with, her dear childhood friend. And then this all of a sudden same thing happened where he's seeing these visions or whatever, and they feel like there's a lot more here and I need to figure out what's going on or whatever. And of course Abby uses this as an excuse, it's not excuse, but to definitely realize that she has to reach out to Swamp Thing to see if he kind of knows what's really going on. So she needs to go back and kind of see what's happening. So she of course eventually goes back to the swamp area at night, and she's kind of, flashlight looking around, checking. Of course she sees the little bit of the numbering of that little number I said, which is like some sort of key or whatever. I think it said 211, and then she comes eventually across the body. And then from there you kind of see where that's when she realizes that there's definitely something going on. Something must have came back, and that's when Swamp Thing said there was some evil that was, part of this body, but now it's no longer there. And that's when he felt like it must have, found its way into the guy, and it found its way into Delroy, and now it might have found its way into the sheriff, because she saw the little interaction or that little moment of the little tussle, between Delroy and Sheriff Lucilla, that she knows she's infected. So of course she finds a way to get back, back to the hometown, whatever. That's when you see Avery and Maria having that little nice little feast, seafood feast, whatever. All the people in the town are, most of them are all there, it's all nice lit up, you got the music, bopping, and the drinks are flowing, and everybody's just enjoying themselves, and that's when you see the scene where Susie shows up. Maria's so happy to see she's happy, she has a smile on her face. They're just enjoying their time getting to know her, because she's staying with them. And it's just really nice how, of course, Maria's actually so happy that Susie is there, and of course Avery's very happy about that. And then from there you see the scene where it looks like Madame Xanadu is kind of having a chat with Daniel, aka Blue Devil, and he's just trying to understand. This is where I kept bringing up where I'm really wanted to know a little bit more on him, and we're getting more and more information as the episodes go, where he's trying to understand why he's not able to leave Marseille, what's going on. And I'm kind of like scratching my head like, okay, there's a lot more to this, and I'm really looking forward to more episodes moving forward, understanding what he's referring to with him saying he can't leave Marseille. And it just kind of lets her, know, hopefully Abby will trigger something, me helping her, whatever. So this, whatever, some sort of curse or something might be uplifted, and he can leave Marseille. And just listening to him talk about it, whatever, not understanding what's really going on, and the madam, just saying certain things to him, I feel at times could be considered cryptic or whatever, but him becoming very frustrated with the whole situation because, he just feels stuck. He can't do what he wants to do. He can't leave. So like I said, yes, my radar is up on this whole particular storyline with him, and I like how it's slowly being revealed, so to speak. So, but yes, from there, you see the scene where it showcases, of course, Liz, Abby, picking up Liz, and they're kind of discussing the situation with what's going on, what's happening. We got to get to the sheriff, whatever, now she might be infected, whatever. So of course, from there it shows, the sheriff, she's, kind of looking around, whatever, unbeknownst to a lot of people, but to me, you can clearly see that she's having a bit of a vision, whatever. But at first, it just looks like she's just entering, the festivities. Of course, her son comes up to her, whatever, and she's talking to him, all happy to see Matt. And then of course, she's like, what's going on over there? She sees like this little altercation where this guy is kind of, putting his hands on this girl, and he decides to go over and, diffuse the situation. That's when he, of course, the guy, pushes Matt down, starts stabbing. Of course, she starts losing it, trying to get over to the guy, whatever, what have you done? Oh my God, my son is bleeding out, whatever. She's freaking out. And she's like this, all the while not realizing when she's freaking out, people around her look at her and she's freaking out. All you see on the ground is what looks like to be her jacket. Nothing on the ground. Matt's nowhere to be found. By then, of course, Abby comes in, whatever. By then, she's pulled her gun out, and she's telling people to back up, and all she's seeing is the guy who stabbed her son. And she's not realizing that she's talking to no one, whatever. She's getting the people, in the town inside there kind of freaked out at the moment. Abby's trying to, talk her down, get her to give me the gun, put a gun. She's like, I'll shoot you, dead in your face, get away from me, get away from my son. And they're just kind of going back and forth, whatever. Eventually, Daniel shows up and knocks the gun out of her, her hand. And she's like, come with me, Sheriff, Lucilla, please, whatever. And she grabs her, Abby, by her hands. And that's when you see they kind of get into a little kind of tussle, whatever. So it's by then she scratches Abby. And that's what Abby needed, because when she saw Swamp Thing, he told her it's an evil that's left this old body, whatever, it needs to be brought back to the swamp. So she realizes, she's like, okay. Matt eventually shows up, she's all happy, oh Matt, whatever, not realizing everything she just dealt with was actually a hallucination. She was seeing some sort of vision, whatever, an evil one at that. And that's when she lets Matt know, take your mother to the hospital. She's on her way out the door, and that's when Liz comes. She's like, don't touch me. I'm infected with her. I need to get this back to the swamp. So she, of course, hurries on. She gets on the boat. She gets down there, whatever. And in the midst of that, she starts, seeing how the night light starts to kind of get darker and darker. And this is when you see kind of a reveal with her situation where it's some type of, raspy voice of a man and a shadow of a man, whatever, talking to her. I thought I'd never see you again, you staying away from me, and all this, and she's freaking out, whichever. That's when she starts to have the vision of the situation she's always feared when she was young. And he, of course, grabs her around, dragging her, whatever, won't let her go. He picks her up by her neck, and he's just, strangling her from there. And that's when you kind of see her having the vision, but she's, pushing off, the guy, but she's pushing off the Swamp Thing. He's trying to hold her to kind of stop her. And he's like, let me take this from you. That's when Swamp Thing eventually takes this, this evil, supernatural entity from her. He has a moment, he steps back, whatever, he's, fighting it, whatever, and he finds a way to walk towards the decomposed body and puts it back into the body. And that's when you see the scene, Abby kind of working her way to him, like Alec, and that's when you see it goes into the body, and then the ground of the area around the swamp takes it and buries it all up under the ground. And he's like, this person, all these issues that he or she went through, and one thing is that he went through, whatever, and all that, never wanted this to get out, whatever. It was keeping this stuff, within, or whichever. And that's kind of why that body, I'm assuming, was up in the tree, whatever. How it got there, I don't know. We never understood that part. But then I like the scene where Swamp Thing's talking to her about what's really going on. You were having a nightmare or vision or stuff, what was happening. And she was explaining how, when she was a child, there was a creature she thought something was going to take her mother away from her, or whichever, and she kept having these like nightmares of sorts. But when her mother passed or whatever and was gone, it kind of stopped. And that was very interesting to me, because I feel like we have to dabble into that a little bit more. So, but yes, he was just like, you could tell he kind of felt for her and what she'd been going through with this type of fear vision, because of how very intensifying it was for her. Then, of course, it shows a scene of Marie and Avery, of course, at home, and they show Susie, kind of eating a little something, whatever, at the dinner table, and she, telling Avery thank you, because now Susie is staying with them. They're going to be watching Susie because, of course, she lost her father. Her mother, of course, might have passed, or whatever. So now she's with them, and Maria's kind of happy. It's almost like a second chance of sorts, for her, and of course a second chance for Avery to get what he wants, so he can do what he wants to really do. So if he keeps his wife distracted, he can get what he wants. So again, shady man. So from there, it kind of shows a scene of him meeting what looks like to be the uncle, I'm assuming the father's brother, and he basically asking him, what would you want with a little kid? What are you going to do with a little kid? So he pays him off. He says, oh, here you go, whatever. He says, please don't use it all at the bar. And he walks away from him. And yep, that lets you know, he's like, don't interfere. Don't try to get custody, whatever. She's going to be staying with us now. So you go about skedaddle, and I'll take it from here, whatever. Of course, smoking his little cigar, whatever. And then you see the scene again of just the Swamp Thing, talking to Abby. It's kind of becoming daylight, like she's been there kind of a little overnight, and he's just kind of like, kind of feeling for her and what she's going through, whatever. He says, it's some evil out here. He says, I'm afraid for you, Abby, because this is just the beginning. And really is, I feel like, honestly, the beginning, because we're really going to get in the thick of it with this one. So with this episode, I really, really enjoyed it, you guys. I will say, I'm loving, like I said, about learning more about Daniel, aka Blue Devil, because like he says, he's not able to leave Marseille, and I'm not understanding what he means by that. That's why I'm looking forward to the next episode, hopefully going into more detail, whichever, because I'm scratching my head like, what is he talking about? Is this some sort of curse? Is making it impossible for him to leave? Because it's just not resonating with me just yet. So like I said, I need a little bit more, because him talking like this is just like really getting me wondering what the heck. Now for Avery and Maria, you already know how Maria's feeling. She's definitely become slightly smitten with Susie, and I know that she would love to make sure Susie's well taken care of course, the way she's been treating Abby, wanting to check on her, let Abby do her thing, whatever, just to get to know her and bond with her. And just seeing how Avery went to lengths, certain lengths, to make this happen, where now she's living with her, and just the smile is putting on Maria's face, so you can tell is something that's, like I said, keep her distracted, is causing to get Avery in some ways brownie points. He's winning with Maria to soften her up, to give him what he wants, whichever. So definitely an agenda for him. Maria right now probably not so much, but I feel like there's an underlining with her as well. Now, this whole situation with the supernatural entity, I love that this type of episode. I love things like this because let's just be real. I've watched media shows where they kind of delve in this. One in particular being the show Supernatural. Matter of fact, I'm wearing the shirt. I thought it was fitting to wear this for this particular episode, and they've done something like this in the past. There's an episode called Yellow Fever that kind of delves into this. So this one was right up my alley. I actually enjoyed this because it really made me think of that episode from Supernatural. Now, I loved how, of course, the scratch whatever would cause, of course, you get the itch, and then, of course, you start, dealing with some sort of evil, situation, or like I said, a vision, whatever, a part of your past. But the thing with the snake was really interesting because at least with Delroy, you got an understanding of something he feared, or something he dealt with that was, a fear-like situation. I'm assuming, the young guy, had a fear of snakes or whatever and all that, something like that, whichever, because all the fears were different. The fear of Lucilla, somebody hurting her son, that was one of her worst fears. So that's why I was like, and same thing with Abby. So I loved how we got to see all these 4 different ways of showcasing, a certain type of fear from all 4 of these individuals. I thought that was really nicely done. Also from that, like I said at the beginning, seeing how Avery went for somebody who couldn't fathom, hurting even a fly, got past that over time. I would like to see how he got over that. We're seeing him now being very vengeful, killing somebody, trying to, dispose of the body. But I want to see what was it that triggered him to finally start, doing what he needed to do in the end if somebody backs him into a corner, if he has to kill. I mean, you didn't see it in this incident because his father ended up being the one to kill the gator, but I want to know exactly. So I hope we do get a flashback of when he really started to just, lose what I feel all type of humanity. He masks it very well, trying like he's a really nice guy, whatever. Those are the ones you got to watch out for because they'll smile in your face and literally stab you in your back. So yes, I am here for Will Patton. He is playing the heck out of this character. He really makes me not like him. So it's effective. But yes, like I stated, this was a great episode. I enjoyed this immensely. So I'm looking forward to episode 5. So you know what, you guys, comment below if you all watched the show. Let me know which part of the episode you all liked. And with that said, I will see you guys on the next recap. You guys take care.